Hey everyone, what's going on and welcome back to the channel where I've decided to change my Twitch main save for this year. The Glory Hunter still exists. The Glory Hunter may be returned to, 6 months down the line, depending how long this save takes. But the Glory Hunter has been shelved for the time being. I don't know how many people will be sad about that, but I'll be completely honest. Over Christmas, I had a bit of thinking about this Twitch save. I wasn't really feeling it as much as I would like to have. Not that I wasn't enjoying it, but I wasn't as invested as I hoped I would be. And I'll be honest, I've never really been one for those hopping around saves. I've never done a journeyman for that reason. I like to get invested in one club and stay with one club, if that makes sense. I've never enjoyed switching clubs or the idea of it. I like building a legacy in one place. And with that in mind, that's what the new save is. I'll be honest as well, it's slightly tactical. I want to be completely upfront with everyone. It is a slightly tactical decision as well. Both my YouTube and my Twitch have a certain amount of hanger-on from when I was doing reasonably well. Twitch more so than YouTube. But essentially, when it comes to Twitch, I am rebuilding a following over there. And I just feel like when a Glory Hunter gets to the second chapter or the third chapter or the fourth chapter, the further on it gets, the less likely new people are going to hop in to a brand new person. I think it's a great save for YouTube because you can always catch up with that journey. I think it's a great save for someone who's already established on Twitch because then it's more about the person than it is about the save. But when you're still trying to build the Twitch channel back up again, it's about the save as much as it is the person in terms of enticing people in the first place. So I just feel like with a tier 10 to the top save, which this is, people are going to be less apprehensive about joining it part way through, if that makes sense. That's my thinking anyway. Like I say, the Glory Hunter has just been shelved. It might come back at some point later on. Depends how long this will take. I suspect it will take a while because we are in tier 10. With that all being said, welcome to Skegness town. Now, Skegness is a town in my home county of Lincolnshire, where I grew up. I would like to say I have fond memories of Skegness. I do, for the most part, at the Laser Quest, where I had my birthdays most years. Skegness as a whole, apologies to people from Skegness and people who like Skegness, it's not the most pleasant place in the world. It very much has that slightly run-down aesthetic that a lot of coastal towns have in Britain these days. But if I was to ask a question, pointless style, in a sense, or family fortune style, depending on which way you want to spin it, name places in Lincolnshire, you would say Lincoln first for obvious reasons. I think most people outside of Lincolnshire would probably say Skegness second. It's probably the second most recognisable place in Lincolnshire outside of Lincoln. Now, you could probably argue Grimsby and Boston for footballing reasons. Scunthorpe, if people remember that Scunthorpe is in Lincolnshire, which most people don't, I would probably argue on the whole, most people would recognise Skegness as the second most notable place in Lincolnshire. And its football team's in tier 10, which gave me a perfect opportunity to bring one of my local sides, well, growing up local sides in a sense, to the top. I've already done 2 streams of this, so I'm part way through the season. We sit in third as things stand, where it's sort of in a 3-way fight for the title. There's 2 promotion spots in this division from the Northern Counties East Division 1 to get into the Northern Counties East Premier. I just want to talk about a little bit why I chose Skegness in particular. It's not just the fact it's Lincolnshire based. And I've not really talked about in general. I've not really done a video on this separately. It's not really something I kind of want to do a video on separately. But if you follow me on Twitter, you know why I had certain periods where videos weren't happening and everything was a bit flexible during the early stages of the beta. My mum sadly passed away at the end of last year in November around that time. And she passed away in Skegness Hospital. So Skegness now has a place in my heart for the lovely care that they gave her. And that's partially why I chose this one. So that investment is already there before I've even clicked continue, the first continue. The investment's already there, that it wasn't necessarily with the Napoli and the Glory Hunter. Like I say, I might return to it. It's also the reason, by the way, that if you've noticed in my Sheffield United save that the faces have gone, I didn't realise that applying faces to this save would remove them from the other save. I didn't realise that was going to be a thing. And just a top tip, that might be something you want to look into fixing in the future, guys who are dealing with this Zealand face pack. Apparently you can only have one at a time. If I've got something wrong, let me know, by the way, in the comments, because I will fix it. Otherwise, I will resort to the other face pack for the Sheffield save. But that's the reason why I've chosen Skegness. Now, Skegness is an amateur club in the tier 10 database. In the normal database, I've looked into it. It's just a semi-professional. There is one issue with the club, and I'll bring it up right now. I've just arbitrarily stuck in a blank shirt in there just to check that will work. We don't have an away kit. That's the main issue I have right now. We don't have an away kit. Thankfully, because the main kit's primary colour is registered as white, it's white with red, which is an annoying sentence to say. Thankfully, because there's just a void in the away kit, when we are forced into the away kit, it comes up as a black kit. So thankfully, that works out quite well, because if we're having a kit clash with white, then it typically means that black isn't going to be. So that's worked out right. The worst part of this is, if SI took 2 seconds to look at the Wikipedia page for Skegness Town, it literally lists the away kit as being yellow with green. Basically Norwich. That is a little bit annoying. And I looked in the pre-editor. There's no way of adding things in the pre-editor. You can edit with the in-game editor, which I tested and I had to buy specifically for testing this. Obviously, it's not active on this save because I decided to pursue with the original one. I would have redone the first save's worth of content if I could have added in a second kit in the pre-editor. There's no way to add one in that doesn't exist already. If there's like space for a kit, then you can edit it, even if it's not currently active. But there isn't any other kit than the home kit active in the pre-game editor. So that's an issue. It does mean if I do any custom kits, only the home kit will ever appear in the save. But I'm leaning into it, I'll be honest. I'm leaning into it. It's already become a meme in my eyes, the fact we don't have an away kit. Like I say, we're third as things stand. We've played 13 games. I'm about to stream the next part of this as I record this, actually. So there's not really a lot to talk about because they are a tier 10 team and the entire squad is now different than it was when I started. They weren't worth introducing you to because they were going to get replaced basically straight away. Facilities-wise, poor everything as you'd expect. They have basic corporate facilities. They're playing the Vertico Stadium, which is a great name, in my opinion. 1,000 capacity, 50 seated. I'm hoping, I know exactly where this is because I've driven past it a lot, obviously, towards the end of last year. I've driven past it a lot. I think there's space to expand it. I think there is. I don't think we're going to have a York situation. There's definitely a lot of space around Skegness to build a new one. Whether we will get planning permission is a different question. No affiliates as things stand. No rivalries, which is interesting. They are the Lily Whites, and we are amateur in this version of the database. I only have the option to go professional. There's no option to go semi-professional. I don't know how that works, if someone can correct me on how that works, but if I go into Club Vision, the only thing that I can ask for in terms of, which one is it under? No, networking, I think. Finance, professional status. It'll only ask you to go professional, not semi-professional for some reason. I don't know if I automatically become semi-professional if I reach a certain level. Eagle-Eye viewers will have noticed very disappointed with Skegness Town's English Northern Counties East Division 1 5-all draw with Hallam. That was a thing that happened on the end of last stream. 5-all, we made it 5-4 in the 94th minute, only to concede 2 minutes later. We scored in the 91st and 94th minute to turn the tie around, and then throw it away again. Ridiculous game. Ridiculous game. We've had 2 7-3s already this year. There's a 5-0, there's a 4-1, there's a 5-2, there's another 4-1 there. Goals about, a 5-1 early on as well. Yeah, a lot of goals in Tier 10. It's not boring down here, that's for certain, and you can see a couple of names popping in quite a lot. Capend 4 there, Capend 3 that time round. Cameron Walker were there. They're the high scorers. One thing I should say is when we started this save, North Ferriby, who've had some kind of disaster at some point, and are now being placed in Tier 10 with a new version of their club. It's one of those situations where the original club's folded and they've been reintroduced in Tier 10. They were by far and away the favourites at the start of the year. The fact they're 5th is really weird. We have overtaken them quite dramatically in terms of the table. This odds have gone from anywhere, well, we started where sort of Ferriby were, about 2 to 1-ish. We've gone all the way down to 1 to 201 at one point. Now we're just 1 to 10 again. We've got a lot of the players in the first Dream 11. I always say that the first 11. We've got players in the Dream 11. I nicked the best right back. The best right back suddenly became a different player. But recently just acquired the best left back as well in the division, because why not? Gary Thompson, I'm not going to introduce you to many players, but I will introduce you to Gary Thompson, who has very much become a little bit my talisman for this team. Not captain or anything, but I acquired him recently. For 39, the pace is good. I'll be honest, the pace is good for a 39-year-old. He's faster than a lot of the younger lads, actually. I never will understand that why young players only have like 5 pace and acceleration. Gary Thompson is a name you might recognise. He was involved with Bradford City, a previous save on this channel, of course, back when I was nowhere near good at this thing, but Bradford City in 2012 to 2014. He played in the Carabao Cup final, and so far he has an average rating of 8. For us, he has been really good. 3 appearances, 1 goal, 3 assists. But yeah, Carabao Cup finalist Gary Thompson. is how I refer to him pretty much every time, is in the side. And I'll also introduce you to Jonathan Capend, which is spelled with an O rather than an A for some reason, but Jonathan Capend, well-rounded player. The fact he's getting as many goals as he is a bit weird, but this is tier 10, I suppose. He's scored 12 goals in 8 starts. He's on a 7.5, he's on an 8.09, all things considered. Now, the only question I have with this is, and I did check with the pre-game editor, I think it's just because only 3 sides of this division enter the FA Cup at the very base level. We're not in the FA Cup. It did worry me. I don't think that's going to be a problem going forward. I think if we get promoted, then we're automatically in the FA Cup. And fingers crossed that is the case. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to do with this save. But I'll introduce you to the tactic, which is 4-4-2 custom wing play, because it's tier 10, why be fancy? I have 2 goalkeepers. They are both reasonably good. We have Matt Nolan, who is arguably on paper not as good as the other goalkeeper, but has put in better performances than the other goalkeeper, who is in the Media Dream 11, you notice there. Sam Cowler, who is, you can see immediately, basically, that on paper he is just edging it in basically every place, but he has no potential ability. And his average rating is far worse. 6.6 for him, 7 over a 7 for Matt Nolan. So Matt Nolan does get the nod there, despite being technically worse. But there's no names that you probably... Some people might recognise some names in this. Will Taylor, I think, is one of those players. Formerly of Hull. Never played, of course, but if you're a person who pays attention to Hull, then you might recognise that player. Harvey White is another one who came through Liverpool's academy. If you pay attention to Liverpool's academy, then you may know the name. Like, they're decent. Basically, if they've got reasonable determination and they can run a bit, they're in. That's tier 10. That's tier 10 for you. Left-back's an issue. Neither left-back's performing well. I've not done too many games since they fixed the scoring system, the rating system for fullbacks in particular, so I don't know if that's part of the problem. I don't know if they're just playing badly or if I'm just being told they're playing badly, basically. But essentially, all these players are players I brought in. None of the original 11 still exist. Apologies to the original 11, but they've all been bettered since then, so that is what it is. Cameron Walker, I'll just highlight as well, he was early on our best striker. Formerly at West Brom, came through at West Brom, had a few stints at non-league clubs as well, and finds his way at Skegness at the age of 20. Good finishing, good composure, and can run a little bit better than most people in this division. So that's probably why he stood out. The star ratings always look quite average because you end up with a full squad of players who are all fairly same level of reasonableness. By the time you get to a first place predicted team, they're all sort of 4 or 5 star for the division, but because it's your own squad, they all get evened out to about 3 star. But Tom Bergen is our best player at this stage, I would argue, just on paper. He's the only one in this squad that's more than 3 star. Dreads the big matches, but good player for most regional first division sides. I'll be honest, I don't know what that is. I think that's the tier above. He's a good player for the tier above, basically. He's left-footed and I've been playing him on the right-hand side this entire time, I've noticed. He can't mark, but he can head and he can tackle. He can position to some degree. He's slightly aggressive. His pace is okay, and he can jump and he can push people. Speaking of slightly aggressive, one last person I want to introduce you to is not Wes Parker, who's 36, and yeah, can't really run too much anymore. Been around the Lincolnshire clubs for a lot, and a few others to boot, but there's a few players like that. There's a few players that you might recognise the names of if you're particularly keen on Lincolnshire football in the lower tiers, because they've been around a few of the teams in this area. Frank Jones. I don't know if this is a relation of Vinnie Jones or not, but I would bet on it, because 20 aggression and 19 bravery on a 21-year-old. I would not be surprised if he is a son, nephew, or something of Vinnie Jones. Information-wise, nothing on here in that regard, because obviously Vinnie Jones isn't in the game. I would not be surprised if he was. He has a little bit of potential. He could develop into it. He's very much my first choice back. He's come through at Blackburn. I don't know if that's an indication or not of his parenthood, perhaps, but heritage, whatever word applies to that. But Frank Jones, I love him. He's so angry. Anyway, that does it for the video. It's just the introduction one. I will give you a summary of Season 1 when that's all done. And if you want to catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/AmazingChi. It's always links in the description of every video, let alone these ones. But I hope you understand my decision for this. I'm already so much more invested in this save than I was the Glory Hunter, and I hope that really is reflected in the streams if you do come over. So thank you for watching this. Thank you for joining the streams. Thank you for any follows on either of these channels. Until next time, ta-ra.